Good evening, friends. Welcome to another Word of Gord. It's been a while, and I'm slightly rushing into this one because as I turned on the camera, I noticed the lovely contrast between the twilight blue in the window behind me and the contrasting shades of my shirt, So being this Robert Altman wannabe, I immediately had to turn on the camera and get started. Gee, that choir's loud. Anyway, Asian Tsunami Retrievals. That is where many spirit beings and many meditators and out-of-body practitioners help out, help people transition when there is a sudden earthquake, volcano, or tsunami. I've participated in such activities many times and have written about it in both my first two books and commented on it on posts on Bruce Moen's Afterlife Knowledge Conversation board. And I have, I believe, referred to it occasionally on earlier Word of Gords. Now, this one, coming some years after the Asian tsunami, was prompted by a discovery of a relatively obscure book by myself. Oh, not by me, I discovered it. Surfing into Paradise by Sigrid Kristy. This book seems not to have been that well promoted or distributed, but it's valuable. It's very valuable, and I recommend it to you, all of you who are interested in these mass retrievals when thousands of people die in minutes. This is, I believe, the only book put out around the retrievals of the Asian tsunami of some years ago. Other books may have referred to it, and I have certainly referred to disaster retrievals in my own books, and so has Bruce Moen, for example, and others. But this book is totally devoted to the Asian tsunami retrievals, and it is a very good book. I would highly recommend it. And I will read a few little snippets to try and stimulate your interest. The book is channeled, as I say, to Sigrid Kristy. Not sure where she lives or anything really much about her. Couldn't track anything down about her. Perhaps she likes to remain quiet and relatively anonymous. I don't know. But the book has several chapters, each one channeled to her by a different participant in the retrieval, each doing, different sections of work. Here's one. I'm an ex-Australian surfer from Bondi Beach. Can you hear me clearly? It is my privilege to begin this story from our side of life in heaven. Others will take up their parts as we move through the whole documentary, which has been collated very quickly for you and the world's benefit. Like your special TV program, the aftermath in these realms is still being sifted through stage by stage. But I must state here that our time is considerably faster than yours. We do not have time as you know it, but we do in our own sense. We can make time go forwards and backwards with thought, which is the basis of our existence. Thought, mental and emotional, creates our surroundings, our activities, our visions, our ambitions, our work, and our spiritual development. In this horrendous disaster you have suffered on earth, our thought wavelengths have been magnified to help you in these devastating circumstances. We knew long before your Christmas that this super earthquake was to take place. But how do you warn a world which is in the main ignorant of our existence? Many of you believe in an afterlife in a vague way, that you will go to heaven and perhaps meet loved ones long gone before you, and maybe meet Jesus or any other religious figurehead. But how many of you, if any, are aware of our amazing rescue services? Brothers and sisters on earth, you do not stand alone in these times of devastation. We are with you every step of the way, before, during, and after the terrible events, which tear your minds and hearts apart. And further on, let me begin my story now following my enlisting as a member of the surfing teams, which ran into thousands when we were assembled at the auditorium to be given this initial talk of instructions. It was like standing in a crowded stands of a football match, and our auditorium pitch was one of several. It blew my mind completely as we watched a film on a large screen that we had in front of us about the rescue operation. You might interrupt me here and say, what's the need of rescuing souls anyway, that they will automatically go to heaven? Well, they do, but let's just say they need a little guiding hand to help it go really smoothly. So here I was with some thousands of other volunteers watching the horror film before us. No detail was left out, I can tell you. This was to test just how much we were prepared to do the task, and if we wanted to pull out now, well, this was the time to speak up. Well, indicative, I would say, and communicative. Now, from another communicator, someone who works in a spirit plane convalescent center, where people are often sleeping after their trauma, and one by one they wake up to the realization that they are, well, they're not quite sure, somewhere else anyway. When the first awakenings heralded the truth of their being in heaven, their many reactions to their death from physical life was marked shocked and grief. Many slumped back into a coma of peaceful sleep before reawakening to finding themselves in a beautiful convalescent room, either on their own or with other casualties from their families and friends. The communal rooms proved to be a mixture of reunion and heartache. For most patients, a comfort was to be found alongside loved ones they knew well in the same position as themselves. But not all members of the family or associate group would be present. Inevitably, some had been left behind on earth, survivors in your world, cut off now from those that once surrounded them. The grief on both sides was inconsolable. All our very highly trained nurses, auxiliaries, counselors, doctors, and psychiatrists were working overtime to bring as much compassion and understanding to bear upon the harrowing scenes of bereavement. Hysteria and anger followed as the frustration of being unable to reconcile the situation set into their minds and hearts. Long experience over the centuries has taught us in heaven to simply let each individual vent their anguish openly and in complete freedom, until they slowly calm down towards resignation. The deep emotions react in many different forms. Now, there is much more of value in this book, and obviously I don't have much more time to read any more sections. Perhaps I will on another occasion. But again, I would heartily recommend this to you. Seek it out. Now, synchronistically, the Globe and Mail published an article on the anniversary of the tsunami in Indonesia, and many people's opinions and thoughts were quoted in this article. And I'd like to quote one fellow who was mentioned, who said, this is somebody who's still alive, of course. The tsunami was God's blessing to us, he says, standing atop the Apung Wang, a massive barge that was carried from the harbor 3 kilometers inland and now sits by the rubble of his family's former home. Before, we were fighting in a civil war, he explains. He who now makes his living by conducting $1 boat tours for curious foreigners. Because of the tsunami, we had to stop and work together. God gave us this peace.